first heard about the Smiths about 1983. I was playing in a band called Aztec Camera, who was signed to Rough Trade, who obviously the Smiths were signed to. I knew little bits about them from hearing Hand in Glove and This Charming Man, probably through Jeff Travis and being on the same label really. I didn't really take that much notice, even though they're a Manchester band. I'm from Manchester and I was just so busy being in Aztec Camera at the time. Never heard any of the albums until probably the end of 85, start of 86. Simon Wollstonecroft was a friend of mine from playing in a band called The Colourfield with Terry Hall, and he told me that Johnny wanted to meet up with me. Johnny was a friend of Simon's and Mike and Andy's at that time, so I thought it was just going to be just a sort of friendly chat, maybe go out for a drink or something. I had no inkling of being thought of as an extra guitar player with the Smiths. I think this was January, February 86. I finally got a call from Johnny. I'd been expecting it for a few weeks. You know, nothing about playing guitar or anything, just seeing if I fancied meeting up. So I was up for meeting up. He came around to pick us up at our house, took us back to his house. We just sort of had a chat really for a few hours. Ended up playing guitar together, just sort of having a jam, probably blasting through Stones songs and maybe the odd Beatles song. I can't really remember what we played. And then we went to his studio, which was upstairs, up in one of the rooms in his house. And he was playing us some demos of, I think it was demos for The Queen is Dead at that time, and maybe some rough mixes. He just started playing some stuff, and like I say, I didn't really know that much about the Smiths' music anyway. So it was great to hear, what they were about, and hearing it through Johnny's studio as well. I just sort of got the feeling that night that he's probably looking for another guitar player. And finally, at the end of the night, he said, "If you want to join the band as a bass player," and this was after he'd spoken to me about Andy's drug problem and what was happening with Andy, and they decided that they were going to get rid of him. So they were, he was sort of feeling me out as a bass player, I think, really. Probably for 10-15 minutes or something. I've said it before, I'm not a bass player, so it didn't really interest me, even to be joining a band like the Smiths. That was the last time playing the bass was mentioned. We had a few more meetings after that the next few weeks, and then we went down to Morrissey's house, me, Mike and Johnny. Had a meet with Morrissey in his flat in Chelsea, and we really got on well. Everyone seemed to be buzzing and great vibe. Came out of Morrissey's flat that night, and Johnny just said, "That's it, you're a member of the Smiths, the fifth member of the Smiths now." And this was before he told me that he'd got rid of Andy. So I thought, I didn't really know if Andy was staying or going. But this was as a guitar player. After a few weeks, I'd learned that Andy wasn't going to be able to make the American tour. We had this big American tour coming up for The Queen is Dead, couldn't get visas or something like that. I think he was still going to be staying in the band as far as I knew. So they decided to get hold of this session bass player. So we were rehearsing down, I think it was in Sussex, a couple of weeks down in Sussex. One of the only rehearsals really. I mean, we didn't really rehearse that much. I don't think the Smiths needed to rehearse that much. So we just blasted through a lot of the songs really, a lot of the old stuff which I've been learning with Johnny. As far as I can remember, they were all played really well, but because I'd sort of gotten to know Andy's style by that time anyway, and I just thought he was perfect for the Smiths. It sounded great. If you take that away really, it's not going to sound like the Smiths. I think that's as far as it went, the session bass player, because the next thing I knew we were on our way to America. Andy was with us. Probably did a couple of rehearsals in Mike's cellar at that time with Andy. So it was obviously all sorted out. The visa had been sorted out, and Andy's problems had been sorted out with Morrissey and Johnny. I was only 19 at the time. The first band was Aztec Camera, and then I played with the Bluebells for a while, Terry Hall a few times. Aztec Camera was a great band to play with, toured quite a bit with them and recorded quite a bit. And they had their own quite big following for them times anyway. But when I started playing with the Smiths, I knew it was a completely different thing really. It was this sort of huge band. It was a big leap forward for me as a guitar player. So as soon as we started playing, I remember asking Andy, and any of these sold out, these gigs, and it was a daft question really, because everything was sold out. We were playing they're called amphitheatres over there, they're sort of like probably GMX here or a lot of open air places. We did about 28, 29 gigs, and a lot of the gigs that I'd played, I'd done them 3 years previously with Aztec Camera anyway, but as a support band to Elvis Costello. it was just mad, you know, having this obviously great frontman as Morrissey there. Every night was an occasion, really. It was a pretty rock and roll tour, yeah. A lot of drinking going on, really, between us all. Obviously not Morrissey. We'd just do the gig and everyone would have a laugh together. And everyone was really getting on well as well, you know, at that time. And then the next day we'd have an hangover and get ourselves together, do the gig, and then same again. I think the eve of the tour, it was my birthday, the 29th of July. It was a sort of massive party, really, that night, and I was bought loads of brandies and everything else, and told that I've got to drink them, which I did, and I was just ill, really, just really ill, and but it was brilliant. I think there was a couple of gigs missed off the end. I remember Miami was knocked off the end. I think everyone was just getting really tired. I think we could have taken it in our stride, really. I think Johnny and Morrissey were getting tired of it. It'd been a pretty long tour, so we just all flew back, came back to Manchester. Playing with Johnny, looking back, it was great. I really enjoyed it. I'd been recording and touring for 3 years before that, but it was just great to watch Johnny in the studio and work with him as well. Just watching how he sort of multi-tracked guitars. I was sort of learning all that at that time, but the way it worked live was Johnny had taught me the guitar parts of the Smiths tracks. So I'd play the original guitar parts that Johnny used to play, and then he'd play new stuff over the top, really. So that was it was a privilege playing those guitar parts. I thought there's some amazing guitar parts on the Smiths tracks, and stuff like How Soon Is Now tremolo bit. That was up to me to start the song, and it was always a buzz every time we did it. It was a great buzz. The first few sessions that we recorded with each other in the studio, I think they went really well. The first one was Panic, and that same session we did Sweet and Tender Hooligan, and I think we did the Dre's Train as well. And I thought I'd played pretty well on those sessions. As it got further down the line, a few months later, it wasn't really working as well, and I don't think towards the end of my stay in the Smiths, me and Johnny weren't really getting on. We were quite distant with each other, really, and I've been quoted in the past saying that me and Johnny just didn't like each other, but it wasn't really true. I was sort of defending myself for things that had been said, really, and I just don't think we really got that much of a chance to get to know each other. And I was 19, 20, and Johnny was, I think, 22, 23, something like that. So it's all part of growing up. I could have handled things a little bit better in looking back. The last gig, Free Trade Hall, I think it was, in '86 on the Queen is Dead tour, we didn't really speak to each other for those few days around that. We were both probably in a bit of a mood with each other. I didn't hear anything for the next few weeks. We usually kept in touch, the odd phone call and maybe a little bit of rehearsal at Mike's house. But there was nothing like that. The next gig that I knew was going to come up was Royal Albert Hall. We were going to do a gig there. So I was wondering what was happening about that. Although I wasn't on the phone asking, what's going on. I just thought I left it, really. And as the weeks went on, things really got quieter anyway. And I had an inkling what was going on, really. And then a mate of mine, Ivor, he just said to me one night, I don't think you're in the Smiths anymore. I think Jeff Travis had probably told him what was going on, really. So I found out about it that way. So when the end came, really, of my stay in the Smiths, I remember being relieved. Looking back on a band like the Smiths and to be a part of the Smiths, it's a great part of my sort of guitar playing history, really. At the time, I didn't know after the Smiths split up or after I'd finished playing with them that they were going to have a massive impact like they do now. They're just such an influential band. So it's great to be a part of a band like that, proud to be a part of the history.